Namaskar, this is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. We begin with Donald Trump's Monday surprise. He's hit a pause. He's delayed attacks on Iran's power plants. Is this a window for a ceasefire or just a breather before a bigger strike? And I must clarify, other attacks and strikes are very much on, but even this is a major climb down. It has given a breather to the markets. But the larger story is still negative, with the world suffering the worst ever oil crisis. And at the heart of it all is the Strait of Hormuz. Is Iran going to charge a toll for ships passing through the strait? Does international law allow it? We'll look at that. Also looking at the latest threat from Tehran. What are the midget submarines? Prime Minister Modi briefed the parliament today. We'll look at what this war means for India. Why Trump has been mocking UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. What's going on at the HDFC bank? It has lost $16 billion since the dramatic exit of its chairman. Is the war pushing India towards electric vehicles? And what should you never ask ChatGPT? All this and more lined up. The headlines first. Ukraine hits a major Russian oil port near Finland, triggering a huge fire at the facility. Russia has been pummeling Ukraine with near daily airstrikes. Kiev has retaliated by launching drone attacks and targeting Moscow's energy and military facilities. Pakistan's foreign minister vows to eradicate terrorism. The remark comes as a temporary ceasefire with Afghanistan is set to expire at midnight. Last week, both countries had announced a halt to weeks of hostilities to mark the end of Ramadan. Islamabad claims Kabul is harboring extremists, but the Taliban has denied the charge. An Air Canada Express plane collides with a fire truck on a runway at New York's LaGuardia Airport. 2 pilots were killed in this accident, while several others were injured. The collision took place on Sunday night, after which all flights at the airport were grounded. The long-awaited trial into Greece's worst train tragedy begins, but the hearing was adjourned to the 1st of April due to courtroom chaos. The room was too small to handle the huge interest in this case. 57 people had died in the train collision in 2023. A new rule in Hong Kong forces people to share their phone or computer passwords with the police. This relates to investigations linked to the national security law, which was imposed by China in 2020. Those who refuse to do so will face 1 year in jail. And a top German court rejects a landmark climate case. Environmentalists wanted BMW and Mercedes-Benz to stop selling combustion engine cars from 2030, but the court ruled that citizens' personal rights were not affected by the business activities of the auto giants. It's week 4 of the West Asia war. After 24 days of fighting, there is some hope, some indications of de-escalation. And it came from Donald Trump himself. The US president has delayed his latest attacks. Instead, he is focusing on diplomacy. He says talks are underway for a complete resolution. And this is coming after a brutal weekend of fighting. We saw missiles thudding into Israeli cities. We saw threats and deadlines from the White House. And as usual, defiance from Tehran. So will this lead to a meaningful de-escalation? Let's look at Trump's message first. I am pleased to report that the United States of America and the country of Iran have had, over the last 2 days, very good and productive conversations regarding a complete and total resolution of our hostilities in the Middle East, based on the tenor and tone of these in-depth, detailed and constructive conversations, which will continue throughout the week, I have instructed the Department of War to postpone any and all military strikes against Iranian power plants and energy infrastructure for a 5-day period. And that is certainly written by Trump. Look at all the typos. Pleased to report instead of pleased to report, and which from Harry Potter instead of WHICH. So rest assured, this is Trump talking. But this announcement came out of the blue. On Sunday, Trump had issued a serious threat. He asked Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours. If not, he threatened to destroy Iran's power plants. Basically, plunge the country into darkness. That 48-hour deadline was supposed to expire tomorrow morning, but now Trump has delayed it by 5 days. What's more, he says talks are underway to end the war. Now, just to be clear, only attacks on power plants have been delayed. The other attacks and operations continue. And yet, this is a sudden and stunning climb down. And what is Iran saying? Well, they have not confirmed direct or indirect talks, but their foreign ministry says efforts are underway to decrease tensions with the United States. So who exactly is Donald Trump talking to? The president says his team is speaking to a top leader, but not the supreme leader in Iran. He says if the talks succeed, the war will end soon.
We have had very, very strong talks. We'll see where they lead. We have major points of agreement. I would say almost all points of agreement. If they carry through with that, it'll end that problem, that conflict, and I think it'll end it very, very substantially. They want very much to make a deal. We'd like to make a deal too. We're going to get together today by probably phone because it's very hard to find a country. It's very hard for them to get out.
Will Iran still be able to control the flow of oil?
Be jointly controlled.
By who?
Maybe me. Maybe me.
You want the United States to be
Me and the Ayatollah, whoever the Ayatollah is, whoever the next Ayatollah. Look, and there'll also be a form of a very serious form of a regime change. Now, in all fairness, everybody's been killed from the regime. They're really starting off. There's automatically a regime change.
Nothing is clear yet. Some Israeli sources say the US is talking to Iran's parliament speaker. His name is Mohammad Baghir Ghalibaf. Reports say he's exchanging messages via Pakistan, Turkey and Egypt. And if true, this is big news. The markets are already cheering Trump's statement. It's the first indication of de-escalation and talks. The question is, what led to it? Look at what happened on Saturday. Israel and the US hit Iran's nuclear sites. These are located in the city of Natanz in central Iran. These nuclear sites were hit. In response, Iran fired a massive volley of missiles at Israel. 2 of those missiles slammed into Israeli cities, Arad in the south and Dimona in the Negev desert. More than 180 Israelis were injured in this attack.
לאזור הלך הבניין קורס. כן, מה שקורה פה זה היה קטסטרופה.
This was a significant strike. Israel claims to have shot down 92% of Iran's projectiles, but these 2 missiles sneaked through. Plus, Dimona is not just any other city. It is home to Israel's secret nuclear facility. This is where Israel enriches uranium for its covert nukes. So think of it as a tit for tat. Israel hit Natanz in Iran, so Iran hit Dimona in Israel. Of course, it did not stop there. Overnight, the Iranians launched more drones and missiles. Some of them had cluster munition warheads. Basically, one bomb explodes into multiple bomblets or clusters. That's what a cluster bomb is. These projectiles were seen over Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Iran says they also targeted the Ben Gurion airport. Take a look. The Ben Gurion airport was evacuated today. The Israeli government is wary of more Iranian strikes, so they have curbed the number of flights. Only one plane will operate per hour. These attacks clearly show that Iran retains its offensive capabilities. They are weaker, but still lethal. And what's the other side doing about it? The US is striking Iranian drone and missile sites. They're desperately trying to take out these offensive threats. And what is Israel up to? We'll focus on the Lebanon front first. Lebanon is to the north of Israel. Israeli soldiers and tanks are amassing in the north of the country, in the north of Israel. They're already carrying out operations in southern Lebanon. Multiple explosions were reported in this region, plus a major bridge was blown up. We told you about this strategy last week. Israel wants to cut off southern Lebanon from the rest of the country. They want to sever transport and supply lines. The end goal is to create an Israeli buffer zone in southern Lebanon, basically occupy parts of this country. Now let's look at the Iranian front. Today, Israel hit Iranian infrastructure sites. Multiple explosions were heard in the capital, Tehran. Massive power outages were also reported. Initially, this appeared to be Donald Trump's plan. He posted this message on Sunday. Let me quote again. If Iran does not fully open the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours from this exact point in time, the United States of America will hit and obliterate their various power plants, starting with the biggest one first. So Trump's message was simple. You open the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours. If not, we'll attack your power plants. Despite this threat, Iran did not back down. It threatened to retaliate with 4 responses. 1, a complete shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz. 2, strikes on Israeli power plants and IT centers. 3, strikes on American companies in the Gulf. And 4, strikes on power plants also in the Gulf. Iran also threatened desalination plants in the region. This meant hitting the water supply for Gulf countries. And it wasn't just a threat. It was how they delivered it. The Iranian spokesperson borrowed Trump's own style. Listen to this.
All power plants, energy, and information and communications technology infrastructure of the Zionist regime will be widely targeted. All similar companies in the region that have American shareholders will be completely destroyed. The power plants of the countries in the region that host American bases will be our legitimate targets. Hey Trump, you're fired. You're familiar with this sentence. Thank you for your attention to this matter. The central headquarters of Qadim al-Anbiya.
And hours later, Trump made a U-turn. Frankly, it's a wise decision. Iran has been willing to climb the escalation ladder with Trump. At every stage, it's been tit for tat. First, Iran's military facilities were attacked, so American bases in the Gulf were also hit. Then Iran's fuel tanks in Tehran were hit. Again, the regime targeted Gulf energy facilities. Then Iran's largest gas field was hit. So the regime attacked gas and oil fields in Qatar and Saudi Arabia, and now Trump threatened power plants. So the regime threatened Gulf power plants and desalination sites. Like I said, it's been tit for tat throughout. And Trump needs to realize this. For him, this is a war of choice, but for Iran, this is an existential war. They will respond to every single escalation, and they will keep the Strait of Hormuz shut. After 24 days, There are indications that Trump has realized this. Of course, it's too early to make judgments because with Donald Trump, anything is possible. Maybe he's just trying to calm the markets. Maybe he's buying time, or maybe he's serious. We should get some clarity as the week unfolds. So President Trump has hit the pause button. The markets have got a breather, but the global economy is very much under strain. And it's showing everywhere in stocks and government budgets and economic projections. We'll start with the stocks. Indian markets continued their decline today. Investors lost 14 lakh crore rupees in a single session. That's more than 150 billion US dollars. The Sensex and the Nifty are India's two main benchmarks. Since this war began, they have lost more than 10% of their value. In today's trade alone, they slipped by almost 3%. The trigger was Donald Trump's ultimatum to Iran, his 48-hour deadline to open the Strait of Hormuz. By the time his climb down came, by the time his pause was announced, the markets had already closed for the day in India. So maybe we'll see some recovery tomorrow. But even then, the broader sentiment is unlikely to change because the war has not ended. Far from it. Trump has not called off the strikes on Iran's power plants. He has just postponed them. So investors will remain cautious. The risk of a protracted conflict is still real. And that's especially bad news for the energy markets. The IEA has issued a warning. That's the International Energy Agency. It's the world's energy watchdog, which tracks supply, demand, and risk. And it says the world could be staring at its biggest energy crisis ever.
So the situation is, if we want to put in a context, this crisis, as it things stand now, two oil crises and one gas crisis put all together. The situation is very severe. I can tell you that. In fact, as it started some 3 weeks ago, I decided not to talk to press 3 weeks. But last Friday, I thought I should say a few things because I thought the depth of the problem was not well appreciated by the decision makers around the world.
You heard that. It's the biggest energy crisis in modern history, bigger than the Arab oil embargo of 1973, bigger than the chaos triggered by Iran's revolution in 1979, and bigger than Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. In fact, the current crisis is bigger than all of these three put together. That's what the IEA has said. And the reason is quite simple: the scale of supply disruptions and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of the world's oil passes through this strait. We've been telling you this for 3 weeks now. That's 1 in every 5 barrels sold. Now that the strait is partially shut, the global supply is short of 11 million barrels per day. And it's not just oil. Natural gas supplies have also taken a hit. There is a shortfall of about 140 billion cubic meters. These shortages are hitting economies across the world. In Indonesia, the government is cutting costs. They've put aside $5 billion to cushion the economy. It's like a financial buffer to cover inflated bills. In Pakistan, the people are bearing the brunt of it. 2 weeks ago, they saw a hike in petrol and diesel prices. Over the weekend, there was another hike. This time, it was on premium petrol. The government raised the tax by 200%. Earlier, it was around 100 Pakistani rupees. Now it is 300. The energy crisis is so serious, it has even hit cricket. Pakistan's T20 league is about to start. They call it the Pakistan Super League. But the government is asking cricket fans to not go to stadiums. Watch the matches from home instead. That's the order. The organizers have issued a statement. They say they are implementing what they call a watch from home model. All matches will be held in only 2 Pakistani cities, Lahore and Karachi. Usually, these matches used to be spread over 6 cities, but now it's only 2. And no spectators will be allowed inside the stadiums. Of course, it's not limited to these two countries, and at this rate, the crisis will only grow. French energy major Total Energies has spelled out the stakes. Their CEO says if the war drags on beyond 6 months, the world will suffer, quote unquote, real damage, and no one will be spared. Although Trump's 5-day pause has brought some relief, the price of Brent crude has fallen sharply to less than $100 per barrel, and it's welcome. But until supplies stabilize, until the Strait of Hormuz reopens, and until the war ends, the world will remain on edge. This war was supposed to be about Iran, about their nuclear capabilities and their missiles. But after 24 days of fighting, it seems like this is a war for the Strait of Hormuz. That's how crucial this waterway is. So tonight we'll take a closer look at the strait. What is the status now? What is Donald Trump's plan? And what is Iran's long-term plan? Right now, the Iranian military controls the strait. They decide who goes in and who goes out. Some countries have got selective free passes like India, China, Turkey and Pakistan, but all Western vessels are completely blocked. So you could call it a partial shutdown. That's the status as of now, a partial shutdown, but it could change. Iran says if their power plants are hit, they will block the whole thing.
If the United States threats regarding Iran's power plants are carried out, the following punitive measures will be taken immediately. 1. The Strait of Hormuz will be completely closed, and it will not be reopened until our destroyed power plants are rebuilt.
Which brings us to the second question. What is Trump's plan? He's trying both military and diplomatic options. The U.S. has deployed low-flying jets and attack helicopters. These are the Apache choppers and the A-10 Warthogs. These aircraft are flying over the Iranian shoreline and they are blowing up speedboats and drone facilities. The problem is, this will take time and there is no guarantee of 100% success. That's the military effort. On the diplomacy front, things are unclear. Trump says he had in-depth talks with the regime. Tehran says they've had no such contact. So simply put, when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, Iran has all the cards. Now to the final question. What is Iran's long-term plan for this strait? We may already have seen some indications of this. Let me show you a report. It says one tanker paid Iran. It paid Iran for safe passage through the strait. It paid around $2 million. Officially, Iran has rejected this report, but it does raise questions about the future. Will Iran create a sort of toll system? Will they charge ships for using the Strait of Hormuz? Some Iranian lawmakers are pushing for this. They're drafting plans to impose a toll on commercial ships. Last week, Iran's foreign minister also dropped a hint. He talked about a new protocol for the strait.
In my view, we need to design new arrangements for the Strait of Hormuz and the way ships pass through it in the future, after the war, so that peaceful navigation through this waterway can be permanently maintained under clear regulations, with consideration for Iran's interests and the interests of the region.
Clearly, this is not a wartime plan. Iran is talking about a post-war system. They want a new arrangement or protocol for the strait. The question is, what would that look like? We're talking about a very busy waterway. The Strait of Hormuz carries nearly 20% of global oil shipments. Before the war, around 130 ships crossed every day, 130 ships every day. Since the war began, less than 100 ships have crossed. That's less than 100 ships in 24 days. Any toll on this waterway would be a global crisis. It would probably lead to pushback from countries around the world. Plus, it would be illegal. You see, the Strait of Hormuz is located in territorial waters of two countries, Iran and Oman. On paper, they own the strait. At the same time, they do not govern it. Hormuz is recognized as an international strait. Basically, it is a crucial global choke point. As a result, the strait is governed by international maritime law. The same applies to other choke points as well, like the Malacca Strait in Southeast Asia. The law says you cannot impede transit through these waterways. They must be seamless and free. Of course, international law does not have a lot of sway these days. Plus, Iran is not party to the global maritime rules. So if they want to, they can weaponize the Strait of Hormuz, maybe park some warships in the middle or install a few rockets or drone launchers on the shore. Physically, it's quite possible, but politically, it would be a disaster. Some of Iran's most important partners use the strait, like India and China. They will not be happy about this toll system. Also, it would set a worrying precedent for the future. If Iran can weaponize its waters, what is stopping other countries? Nothing. But chances are things may not go that far. Any settlement to this war will include the Strait of Hormuz. It's the ultimate bargaining chip for the regime. Blocking it is a strategic wartime move, but imposing a toll would be overplaying that hand. Let's turn to India now. This war has put New Delhi in a tough spot. Our energy trade is at risk, and so is our diplomatic position, because India's friends are fighting on both sides. If this continues, what does India stand to gain or lose? In the short term, there are no gains. Today, India's Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, briefed the parliament on the situation. He compared this crisis to the pandemic. Prime Minister Modi called for dialogue and de-escalation in Iran. He also urged all Indians to stand together during this crisis.
भारत हमेशा से मानवता के हित में और शांति के पक्ष में अपनी आवाज उठाता रहा है। मैं फिर कहूंगा कि बातचीत और कूटनीति ही इस समस्या का समाधान है। हमारे हर प्रयास तनाव को कम करने, इस संघर्ष को समाप्त करने के लिए है। इस युद्ध में किसी के भी जीवन पर संकट मानवता के हित में नहीं है। इसलिए भारत का प्रयास सभी पक्षों को जल्द से जल्द शांतिपूर्ण समाधान के लिए प्रोत्साहित करने का है। इस युद्ध के कारण दुनिया में जो कठिन हालात बने हैं, उनका प्रभाव लंबे समय तक बने रहने की आशंका है। इसलिए हमें तैयार रहना होगा, हमें एकजुट रहना होगा।
India's immediate concern is energy, mainly cooking gas or LPG. New Delhi has secured passage for some of its ships. Earlier today, 2 Indian-flagged vessels crossed the Strait of Hormuz, Jagvasant and Pine Gas. Both ships are carrying cooking gas. But despite such deliveries, problems still persist. Consider the issue of fertilizers. India's Kharif crop season is about to begin. It makes up nearly 60% of the country's agricultural output. But Indian farmers are worried about urea. You see, urea plants require natural gas. But right now, supplies have been disrupted. Most urea plants are not receiving enough gas. And the result? These plants are operating at half the capacity. If this persists into April and May, we could have a big problem. Prime Minister Modi addressed this concern today. He promised all help to farmers.
हमारा ये भी प्रयास है कि खरीफ सीजन की ठीक से बुआई हो सके। सरकार ने बीते सालों में आपात स्थिति से निपटने के लिए खाद की पर्याप्त व्यवस्था भी की है। अतीत में भी हमारी सरकार ने दुनिया के संकटों का बोझ किसानों पर नहीं पड़ने दिया था। मैं सदन के माध्यम से देश के किसानों को विश्वास दिलाता हूं कि सरकार किसानों की हर संभव मदद करती रहेगी।
These are India's immediate concerns, cooking gas and fertilizers. Now we come to the strategic implications. Before the war started, India's thinking was clear. Iran is a country hobbled by sanctions. You can't buy their oil, you can't invest in their infrastructure. So what's the payoff? Which is why India started moving closer to the other side. New Delhi built deeper ties with Israel and the Gulf. That's where India saw its future. Cut to the war, and that thinking was challenged. Iran weaponized the Strait of Hormuz, and with one move, they choked Asia's energy supplies. This forced a rethink. India's leadership reached out to Iran. They secured safe passage for multiple Indian vessels. But is this a short-term rethink or a long-term rethink? That could depend on how this war ends. What if the regime falls? What if the Gulf states are crippled? What if there is a permanent peace deal? Until we have clarity, India cannot make a decision. But here's the ideal scenario. Iran's regime remains in power. The Gulf energy facilities remain intact. The Gulf-Iran trust is rebuilt. There is a permanent end to the war, not a fragile truce, and the sanctions on Iran are lifted. This is the ideal scenario for India. As you can see, it's also a highly unlikely scenario. This would require major concessions from Israel and the US. So chances are we will get something in between. The fact is, India bet heavily on a stable Gulf. Around 40% of our foreign remittances come from this region. The Gulf countries are India's largest trading partners. Total trade is around $178 billion. Out of this, Indian exports make up $57 billion. In fact, India is looking to sign a free trade agreement with Gulf countries. It tells you how much potential New Delhi sees. But if this war continues, that's all out of the window. No stability, no trade. Which brings us to the gains. Are there any upsides for New Delhi? As a country, we are more reactive than proactive, so crises often trigger long-term changes. And this one could be similar. We could use this opportunity to boost our energy reserves. Right now, India's strategic oil reserves are only 2/3 full. For a country of 1.4 billion people, we need more. For cooking gas, we need alternatives. More people should be connected via piped gas, and wherever possible, electrification should be encouraged. India is blessed with sunlight and mighty rivers. We should tap them further for renewable energy. This war can be a catalyst for these changes. If we play our cards right, this can be another step towards self-reliance. As they say, never waste a good crisis. For 80 years, Britain and the US have shared what is called a special relationship. The term was coined by Winston Churchill. And no, it's not just a nice phrase, it means real things. Shared intelligence, nuclear cooperation, diplomatic cover, military partnership. Basically, when America calls, Britain picks up every single time. This relationship survived the Cold War. It survived the Afghanistan war. It survived Iraq. It survived every awkward president and prime minister. It is, by any measure, the closest alliance America has. But as we speak, Donald Trump is setting it on fire. The story begins with a comedy skit. It portrayed Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, as this nervous, bumbling man. In one scene, he's supposed to call Trump. And he sounds terrified. He asks his deputy, "What if Trump shouts at me?" This is all part of the skit. Donald Trump shared it on social media. He posted this video on Truth Social. He did not write anything, but he did repost. Think about it. A sitting American president publicly mocking a British prime minister, mocking his own ally. And this is not the only instance. He's been doing it for a while. Since the Iran war began, the underlying tension has been showing because Trump wants his allies to step up. But they're not interested, especially the United Kingdom. Trump wants them to do more. Since the war began, he's been critical of Prime Minister Keir Starmer. First, he said, "This is not Winston Churchill we're dealing with."
Mr. President.
You see that man right there? You know who that is?
Churchill.
Winston Churchill. The late, great Winston Churchill. And Barack Hussein Obama did not want his bust in this office. Did you know that? And Barack Hussein Obama sent that bust back to England. They didn't want it. And when I came in, I was asked if I wanted it. I said, absolutely, I want it. And I put it right there, Winston Churchill. And, you know, unfortunately, Keir is not Winston Churchill.
So first he compared Keir Starmer to Winston Churchill. Then he said he was disappointed with Starmer. You see, the US wanted to use British military bases. The RAF Fairford in Gloucestershire and Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. Trump wanted these bases to launch strikes on Iranian missile sites, but Keir Starmer said no. Of course, Trump did not like that. Eventually, Starmer did give in. He allowed the US to use both the bases. In fact, on Sunday evening, the two leaders spoke on the phone. They talked about the Strait of Hormuz. They talked about the importance of global energy stability. They also agreed to speak again soon. But here's what the readout did not mention. Did Trump post the skit video before or after the call with Starmer? Also, here's the thing. Britain is not America's equal. It hasn't been for decades. Post-Brexit Britain is a medium-sized power. It's a power that punches above its weight, and it has been able to do so only because of its relationship with Washington. You strip that away and Britain loses a lot of leverage. So every British Prime Minister since Churchill has done the same thing. They've quoted the American president of the day, and Starmer has actually been better at this than most. He flew to Washington early, he brought in the royals, he tried every angle, but Trump still mocks him on social media. He can take solace in the fact that he's not the only one being mocked, though. Trump slams most of his allies. He's called the NATO a paper tiger. He's always seen the NATO alliance as a bad deal for America, too many freeloaders, not enough burden sharing. But what he's doing right now is different. He's calling NATO a paper tiger because it refuses to join a war that it wasn't consulted on.
So I think NATO's making a very foolish mistake. And I've long said that, I wonder whether or not NATO would ever be there for us. So this was a great test, because we don't need them, but they should have been there.
Trump doesn't see alliances the traditional way. He doesn't see most things the traditional way, and it doesn't always work out as he expects. For decades, US foreign policy was about three things: partnerships, diplomacy, shared values. It is what earned Washington heft and clout. It's the reason why these countries marched in with American soldiers in their illegal invasions, which they call democracy projects. But Trump doesn't care about any of it. He has a simpler metric. Are you helping me right now or not? If yes, then you're my friend. If not, then you're a problem. But this strategy is backfiring, because power is not a transactional game. It's a game of foresight and patience. When trust erodes and cooperation weakens, countries look for other partners, and you lose clout. Trump's term as president will end in another 3 years, but the damage that he's doing to America's alliances will be felt far beyond that. Our next story is about Iran's naval strategy. For days, we've been telling you that the Strait of Hormuz has been under threat. Ships have been attacked, seafarers have been killed, and thousands of crew have been stranded. But Iran is now adding another weapon to this war. It's called the midget submarines. They're small, silent, and very hard to detect. The idea itself is not new, though. Midget submarines have been in existence since the Second World War, but in this war, their one specific capability has brought them into the limelight. And that is laying underwater mines. Even a few mines in the Strait of Hormuz can halt shipping for days. Our next report has more.
Beneath the Strait of Hormuz, something is moving, and it isn't a tanker. The war in West Asia has already reshaped these waters. The skies have seen missiles. The surface has seen strikes. And traffic through one of the world's busiest oil routes has dropped sharply. But there is another threat now taking shape. Not in the skies or the surface, but underwater. Iran's midget submarines. They are small, quiet, and in the shallow, crowded waters of Hormuz, very difficult to find. At first glance, they do not compare to the giants of naval power. Take the United States Ohio-class submarines, for instance. These are massive, nuclear-powered, can stay submerged for months, and carry long-range missiles across oceans. Midget submarines are totally the opposite of that. They are built for short missions. They operate close to shore and rely on stealth, not scale. That difference matters in the Strait of Hormuz. This waterway is narrow. Shipping lanes are tightly packed here, and the seabed is quite shallow. That makes it difficult for large submarines to maneuver freely. For a midget submarine, those same conditions are an advantage. Iran has built its naval strategy around this geography. For years, it has studied and trained crews specifically for this environment. It operates the Ghadir-class midget submarines. These are designed for coastal operations. They can lay underwater mines, launch torpedoes, and target commercial or military vessels at close range, all while staying difficult to detect. Tehran reportedly has up to 10 Ghadir-class midget submarines. Yet the concept itself is not new. Midget submarines have been used for decades. They were deployed during the Second World War for covert attacks. The idea is simple: stay hidden, strike suddenly, and vanish before a response can be mounted. That thinking fits into Iran's broader approach. It does not aim to match the United States Navy ship for ship. Instead, it focuses on asymmetric warfare. That means using smaller, cheaper tools to challenge a stronger force, to stretch its resources, and to raise the cost of every response. This playbook is already in motion, with drones, with fast attack boats. Now it has moved underwater. Washington has targeted parts of this network, but many of these systems are decentralized. They are designed to survive. Small vessels can launch from hidden coastal points, and midget submarines remain difficult to eliminate. For the United States, this creates a new challenge. Detecting a large submarine in open water is one thing. Finding a small one in a shallow, crowded corridor is another. Even with advanced surveillance, detection becomes harder. And in an active conflict, that risk is immediate. Because experts say the real danger may not be torpedoes, it is mine laying. Even a small number of naval mines can halt shipping for days or weeks. Clearing them is slow, complex, and risky. Nearly 1/5 of the world's oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz. Any disruption here does not stay local. It spreads across global markets. So, in these waters, disruption does not need to be massive. It only needs to be precise. And sometimes, the smallest threat can have the biggest impact.
Our next story is about HDFC. It is India's second largest bank, and right now it's in the middle of a storm. Last week, its chairman walked out, and with his exit, the bank has lost $16 billion in market value. Tonight, we look at what's going on here. And we'll start with the man at the center of the storm. His name is Atanu Chakrabarti. He was HDFC's chairman and independent director. Last week, he suddenly stepped down. His resignation letter hit the headlines. It said he was leaving over quote-unquote ethical concerns. Allow me to quote from what he said: "Certain happenings and practices within the bank that I have observed over the last 2 years are not in congruence with my personal values and ethics. This is the basis of my aforementioned decision." Now, this is an extraordinary statement. The chairman of one of India's biggest banks is basically saying he's not happy with the way it's being run. Chakrabarti was at HDFC for 5 years. He's not a career banker, though. He was a retired civil servant. Before joining HDFC, he worked in India's finance ministry in the Department of Economic Affairs. And in that role, he helped shape the country's economic policy. He oversaw the budget-making process from the drafting stage to Parliament. So it's fair to assume that this is a man who understands regulation. And in that context, what he said in his letter becomes quite significant. So what was he so unhappy about? What were these ethical concerns? The bank has not clarified. Their official statement just confirms the resignation. Let me quote from what the bank has said. "We confirm that there are no reasons other than those mentioned in the said letter for the resignation of Chakrabarti." That's all that the bank has said. But the rumor mills have been churning non-stop and reports have been coming in thick and fast. They say there's been a shake-up at the bank. At least 3 senior executives have been terminated. Is this connected with Chakrabarti's resignation? We don't know, but some reports are making the connection. They say HDFC has begun an internal probe. It revolves around Credit Suisse. It should ring a bell. Credit Suisse is a Swiss bank. It collapsed in 2023. It borrowed money and issued bonds to the tune of $17 billion. This debt was written down by Swiss authorities. Basically, the debt became junk. Its value fell to zero. And according to some claims, HDFC was caught in the fallout. Apparently, this is what Chakrabarti was unhappy about. He wanted accountability for the missteps. He was also unhappy with the bank's performance. He believed HDFC's share price was lagging behind its peers and the bank was not performing as it should. I must repeat, these are all reports that we've not been able to independently confirm. But the market reaction to this episode has been quite sharp. More than 1/10 of HDFC's share value has been wiped out, $16 billion erased in market capitalization. That's the market value of the company, $16 billion lost. HDFC is trying to contain the damage. It has appointed an interim chairman. His name is Keki Mistry. He is one of the most respected figures in India's financial sector. The Reserve Bank of India, India's central bank, has also issued a statement. It said it had no concerns about HDFC's conduct or governance. This is clearly an attempt to reassure investors and also the customers of HDFC. But remember, it's rare for regulators to issue a statement like this for a private bank. But again, like I said, HDFC is not just any private bank. It is the largest private sector bank in India by assets. It is also classified as an important bank for the Indian economy, basically a bank that is too big to fail. Currently, 3 banks hold this designation in India: SBI, or the State Bank of India, ICICI Bank and HDFC. So HDFC cannot be allowed to fail, which raises an important question. Shouldn't that warrant more accountability from the bank too? Just think about it. What does a bank demand from its customers? When you walk in to open an account, what do they ask for? You have to submit all kinds of documents, your ID proof, your address proof, your proof of income. You have to walk through the entire process to complete your KYC, know your customer verification. And you do all this to put your hard-earned money in that bank. Now try getting a loan from the same bank. The scrutiny goes up. You have to sign a big deck of papers, show proof of income dating back to months, if not years. You are evaluated against your credit scores. You are subjected to intense verification, all because the bank does not want to lose its money on you. In other words, for you and me, compliance is non-negotiable. We have to share every detail they ask for. But can you demand even a fraction of that transparency from your bank? When the chairman of India's second largest bank resigns citing concerns, do the customers not have a right to know what happened here? I'm sure the story will come out in the days ahead, but this effort to brush it under the rug can trigger unease and panic. We can safely say this story is far from over. The war in West Asia is having another impact on India. It is changing how Indians look at cars and what they want to buy. The war has pushed fuel prices higher across the world. Global energy markets are under pressure. You already know that. In India, petrol prices have not gone up for now, but concerns over a possible hike are growing. It will come at some point, is the fear. And that fear is driving a quiet shift. More people are walking into showrooms, but they're not looking at just petrol or diesel cars. They're asking about electric vehicles. Car dealers say inquiries for EVs have risen in recent days. Our next report tells you why.
Normal petrol and diesel prices have not risen in India. Not yet. But the fear that they might is already changing consumer behavior. Across automobile showrooms, a quiet shift is underway. More people are asking about electric vehicles, not because they suddenly want one, but because the world outside is changing fast. The trigger lies in West Asia. The ongoing war has pushed global energy prices higher. Crude oil has surged sharply. Natural gas prices have also climbed. And even though India has held fuel prices steady for now, the uncertainty is beginning to influence decisions. Buyers are beginning to rethink. What if petrol crosses current levels? What if compressed natural gas, or CNG, becomes more expensive? That question is now driving more interest in EVs. Dealers are seeing more walk-ins, more comparisons, and growing curiosity about running costs. And the reason comes down to a simple calculation. Electric vehicles cost more upfront, but they are far cheaper to run. And in a volatile fuel market, that difference starts to matter more. But this is not a sudden shift. Experts say adoption will remain gradual because the barriers are still real. They are expensive, charging is still not universal, and alternatives, like CNG, still remain popular. So, for now, this is a shift in mindset, not yet reflected in sales. But this is not just limited to India. Across the world, rising petrol prices are expected to drive higher EV adoption. Besides, data shows EVs are already reducing oil demand at scale. Last year alone, they helped avoid around 1.7 million barrels of oil consumption per day. As fuel becomes more expensive due to the Iran war, EVs are becoming a more practical choice, not just for countries, but for consumers as well. For India, this comes at a particularly pointed moment. Car prices are going up. From April 1st, several automakers are increasing prices. Tata Motors will increase prices on petrol and diesel models like the Nexon and Harrier. Luxury brands like BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and Audi are also raising prices by up to 2%. The reasons are straightforward. Input costs are rising, logistics expenses are climbing, and a weaker rupee is making imports more expensive. But there is a clear contrast. Electric vehicles are largely being spared. That leaves buyers weighing a new reality. Fuel uncertainty on one side, rising prices of their favorite cars on the other, and between the two, a quieter alternative that is now becoming harder to ignore.
For our last story tonight, imagine this. You're sitting at your desk rehearsing how to ask for a raise. But instead of calling a friend, you open ChatGPT and type just one thing. Pretend you're my manager, let's negotiate my salary. This is happening in real life. Gen Z is quietly turning AI into their rehearsal partner. From awkward conversations to office conflicts, even performance reviews, they're practicing all of it with a chatbot. They simulate managers, they use it for negotiation tactics, even ask for a script to go with it. And why do they do that? Apparently, Gen Z likes the no judgment part of it. If you did this with a colleague, they might judge you. But ChatGPT doesn't care. And it ties into a broader trend. Look at this survey. It says over 50% of Gen Z already use AI at work. Nearly 3 out of 4 believe that it will reshape their job soon, so they think it is a crucial part of their work life. And not just their work life, people are using ChatGPT for everything: therapy, dating advice, life decisions, fashion choices, even asking questions like, am I attractive enough? Reports say it's one of the most common questions asked. And look at the deluge of questions. ChatGPT handles 2.5 billion prompts a day, 2.5 billion prompts in 24 hours. So you can understand how much the world is already relying on bots. And it's okay to use AI, but here's a caveat. Just because you can ask something doesn't mean you should. So what should you never ask ChatGPT? What are those questions? We made a list and we'll start with the obvious one. Number 1, do not ask questions involving deeply personal or sensitive data. Your passwords, your bank details, your office documents, do not put them in ChatGPT. It may sound obvious, but you'd be surprised by how many people still do it. And here's the problem with this. Once you type it in, it is no longer fully in your control. Think of AI like a cloud notebook, not a log diary. So the rule is pretty simple. If you wouldn't shout it in a crowded room, do not type it into a chatbot. That's number 1. Number 2, therapy and medical questions. Yes, people are using AI for therapy. In fact, one study found that it's the number 1 reason people use ChatGPT for therapy. But a chatbot is not a therapist. It may give you advice that feels right, but it could be harmful for you. And yet, people do it constantly. A symptom shows up, and they turn to ChatGPT to understand, even treat it. Now, you may think, what's the harm in asking? We'll tell you what's the harm. Studies have found that ChatGPT carries a high risk of misinformation, especially on medical questions. So use ChatGPT to understand medical terminology by all means, but get your diagnosis from a doctor. Number 3, don't ask about illegal or dangerous things. How to hack, how to make a bomb, how to get away with murder. Don't ask these questions. Because AI companies are actively monitoring for misuse, some systems can even flag suspicious behavior. So that question that you may have asked out of curiosity may land you in trouble. Number 4, conspiracy theories. AI sometimes hallucinates, which means it can generate completely false information. And it will present that false information like a fact to you. There have been real cases of people going down conspiracy rabbit holes because the AI kept reinforcing their beliefs. So this is a big problem with bots. And number 5, do not use it for real human decisions. Should you quit your job? Should you break up? Confront your boss? AI can help you prepare for those situations perhaps, but it shouldn't decide for you. Because it does not know your life, your history, your relationships, your dilemma. It gives clean answers, but real life is messy. And I'm not saying do not use ChatGPT or whatever bot you use. Use it by all means. It's a remarkable tool. AI is clearly the future. So do use all kinds of chatbots. But don't turn them into your doctor or companion or therapist. The question was never what ChatGPT can do. It can do a lot. The question is, what should you do with it? What should you share with it? And the answer more often is less than you think. Cricket fans in Pakistan were ready for sixes. Instead, they're getting a low fuel warning. The upcoming season of Pakistan Super League has been hit by the fuel crisis in the country. Team, staff, equipment cannot travel smoothly. So now the entire 8-team tournament has been squeezed into just 2 cities. So sixes may still fly, but right now the tournament itself is running on reserve. And the internet has a lot to say about it. Take a look. Now it's time for Vantage shots, images that tell the story. Police fire tear gas at worshippers during Eid prayers at Al-Aqsa. Americans stuck in long lines at airports as government shutdown continues. And floating wonders take over the skies during Indonesia's hot air balloon festival. Also in history, on this day in 1931, Bhagat Singh, Shivram Rajguru and Sukhdev Thapar were hanged to death. The trio had been convicted for the assassination of a British officer and their role in revolutionary activities against the colonial rule. Their hanging sparked nationwide outrage, becoming one of the most defining moments of India's freedom struggle. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.